You know what you're listening to?
Is that a trick question?
It's the I Still Love This Game podcast with your host, Matthew Damian.
He's an idiot. Don't listen to this. He's an idiot.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 28 of the I Still Love This Game podcast. Originally I was going to take the weekend off. As you can probably tell from my voice, I'm a little bit crook, or a little bit sick, as Americans would call it. Crook means sick. And but my friend sent me a video and he told me that I should tear this guy a new one. So I haven't heard this video. I know it's Colin Cowherd because the link says so. But I haven't heard the video. I don't watch this guy regularly or daily or whatever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it. I'm going to stop it. I'm going to interject it with my thoughts and correct it or whatever. But yeah, so I'm not feeling too well, so let's get this started so I can finish it quicker.
You know, LeBron gets all these new teammates. And so last night I go out to dinner with my wife. And all of a sudden I go to dinner and I'm like, oh, I forget. The Cavs are playing OKC. So I sit there and I watch the last hour and a half of it. And Cleveland is fantastic with all these new players. In Oklahoma City, it's interesting juxtaposed. Why can't they figure it out? Now, this is amazing. This is what makes LeBron great. So you give LeBron 4 new players. And by the way, they're not great players. They're good players. Jordan Clarkson's a good player, B-, C+ NBA player. Rodney Hook's a good B player in the NBA, B to B-, but a good player. You know, George Hill's a B player in the NBA. So you're giving him Larry Nance Jr. is probably a C+.
All right, can you get to the point already?
Player in the NBA. So you give LeBron these average guys. They go to Boston and to Oklahoma City. Blowout win, dominating win.
All right, let's just stop it right there. The game against Boston, that win was a dominant blowout. There's no questioning that, and it was impressive. But to call the game against Oklahoma a dominant victory, that angle is just not going to fly. That's complete BS. It was an 8-point margin. It was a 3-point lead for the Cavs heading into the fourth quarter and went back and forth. I watched the whole game, by the way. I didn't just watch an hour and a half because I was out having dinner. So I watched the entire game, as did a lot of people. And they know it was, anyone who watched that realized it wasn't a dominant performance by the Cavs. It was impressive, but it wasn't dominant. Now, this might seem like semantics, but we've got to see what this clown's trying to build here in terms of a storyline. And what he's trying to say is Westbrook is loaded with talent and LeBron has nothing but spare parts. And yet, despite the imbalance of a supporting cast here, LeBron's team still dominates Westbrook's. And that's ridiculous. It really is. But if we want to use an 8-point victory as a dominant blowout, then how about we look at some dominant blowouts that the Thunder have had with Westbrook. 108-91 versus the Warriors, 124-107 versus the Raptors, 125-105 versus the Warriors again. And oh yeah, wasn't there that one game against the Cavs in Cleveland, which was 148-124? Or are we just going to forget that? Now you'll be correct to say that those were very different teams, but we're talking about LeBron. The storyline is trying to be created here is LeBron can dominate Westbrook with just spare parts. And that's clearly not the case.
LeBron 2-0 immediately adapts. Now think about that. Now, Russell Westbrook, you give him not only new teammates, but excellent teammates. He still can't figure it out. They add Carmelo.
Did you just call Carmelo an excellent teammate? I love Carmelo Anthony. I think he's a great player. I think he's one of the great scorers at the small forward position that we've ever seen. But he's never been accused of being a great teammate. Oh my goodness.
Who's going to be a Hall of Famer. They had Paul George, who's an all-star. And they're one game worse than last year.
All right, stop. This guy doesn't know basketball or he's purposely trying to mislead you because teams are never defined by regular season success. Case in point, the 95 Rockets. They had a worse regular season record than the Lakers of Nick Van Exel and Eddie Jones and Cedric Ceballos. Does anybody say that the Lakers in 95 are better than the Houston Rockets? Absolutely not, because it was a playoff success. It's kind of like comparing the 93 Bulls with Jordan to the 94 Bulls without Jordan. Of course, 57 wins with Jordan as opposed to 55 without Jordan. Only a 2-game drop-off. But guess what? They go from winning 3 straight titles to getting bounced in the second round. And to infer that this team, this Oklahoma team, is not as good as last year's because they got the same record or a similar record to last year's team is completely, it's not a true statement. Because this team is built for playoff success. And yeah, they're losing games to teams they probably shouldn't. Like they've lost to the Lakers a couple of times. They lost to the Nets. Those are the ones that come to my mind immediately. But against the Warriors, the Spurs, the Rockets, and the Raptors, the top 4 teams in the league right now. Do you want to take a guess what their record is? It's 5-0. They're undefeated. They're perfect. And a lot of those games have been blowouts. Dominant performances, right? That's the key word of today's show. The 2 games against the Warriors and the game against the Raptors were emphatic blowouts. And at the end of the day, that's why I'm not concerned with their losses against bad teams. That's why I'm not concerned with their record as long as they're going to get into the playoffs. Because guess what? They're going to play good teams in the playoffs. They're going to have to go through Houston. They're going to have to go through Golden State in order to get to the finals. They don't have to go through teams like the Nets or the Lakers to get to the finals. But if you just want to look at regular season records as to determining who's a great team or not, then you probably think the 2015 Atlanta Hawks are a top 10 team of all time.
This is what I say about Westbrook. It is amazing the NBA media just fawns over Russell Westbrook. And I've been saying it for years. He's a stat monster. He goes into tunnel vision mode in crisis, and he doesn't play well with others.
He doesn't play well with others? Hold on a second. Let me just pull up a quote. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. And I wanted to get the quote from what Paul George said recently about Westbrook and potentially staying in Oklahoma. Because I don't want to go into this conversation and try to say that he doesn't play well with others. I prefer the players that have played with him and see what they have to say. So this is what Paul George had to say. Russ is the reason why this decision on staying in Oklahoma is becoming even easier to make. Is the character Russ has, a stand-up guy, and he has his teammates back. Yeah, he really doesn't play well with others.
Why? Because he's strange. We all had that guy at our high school. We all have that guy in our neighborhood. He's not a bad guy. He's not a dumb guy. He's not a terrible guy. He's a strange guy. I've lived next to a strange guy.
Do you remember when sports journalism was actually about sports? Yeah, I remember as well. I miss those days.
I lived next to one in Portland. I lived next to one in Connecticut. I don't talk to my neighbors in L.A. I'm sure there's a strange one. But I'm watching last.
Is it possible to get this guy drug tested? Because that's the only explanation I can come up with. He sounds very high right now.
Night. And since Westbrook, and I think Westbrook's just a strange dude. And I think everybody that leaves him gets better. Victor Oladipo, good player, leaves all-star.
Oh, man, you do not want to go down this road with LeBron James. Seeing 2 games is a measuring stick now in the NBA. Let's have a look at Jay Crowder. He's played 3 games with the Jazz. He played 40-something with the Cavs. With the Cavs, he averaged 8.5 points per game, 3 rebounds a game, and 1 assist per game. With the Jazz, he's averaging 15 points per game, 5 rebounds per game, 2 assists per game. Kyrie Irving went from being LeBron's running mate to a legitimate MVP candidate. Do you want some more examples? I can give you some more examples. This is a conversation that I've had many times. How about we talk about Shaq? People think that Shaq was washed up when he got to Cleveland. That's not the case. He was All-NBA third team and All-Star Game MVP in Phoenix a year before it, and then becomes nothing alongside LeBron. Antoine Jameson averaged over 20 points per game over 4 seasons. Prior to being traded to the Cavs. Then when he joins the Cavs playing alongside LeBron, he's a complete afterthought. Look at Wade, look at Bosh, look at Kevin Love. All their production dropped significantly alongside LeBron. And yet they're really going to go after Westbrook for this?
Kevin Durant leaves him, more efficient. James Harden leaves him, going to be the MVP of the league.
All right. This is a good laugh. I needed this. Kevin Durant's numbers dropped when he went to Golden State. Now that's understandable because of course you've got a whole lot of mouths to feed on that Golden State team, right? But regardless, his numbers did drop. And James Harden was also playing with Westbrook and Durant. So is this a backhanded way of saying that Kevin Durant's a strange player, or he's hard to play with, or he's got two or more Twitter accounts? Oh wait, that was actually true. But everything else that he said about Westbrook, surely that, and he's using Harden to justify that. Can't you also apply that to Kevin Durant?
Sabonis leaves him, goes to Indianapolis, all his numbers double. Westbrook's strange. He's odd. He's a little weird. And he doesn't play well with others.
Yes, you've already said that.
He still can't figure this thing out. That's with Paul George. I mean, he's got real players around him.
And LeBron had Isaiah Thomas, Derrick Rose, J.R. Smith, Kevin Love, Tristan Thompson, Channing Frye, all those players, and he couldn't figure that out either. Sometimes certain lineups don't mesh. It's pretty simple if you follow the NBA and you have any type of common sense.
Steven Adams is like a 16-10 guy. He's a beast. He's a beast. Melo's going to be a Hall of Famer. Paul George is an All-Star. Russell Westbrook's an MVP. And
once again, he's repeating everything that he said earlier. Seriously, I want to get this guy a drug test.
They're a game worse than last year. LeBron gets 4 average guys, B-C guys, and they go into OKC and dominate them. I mean, they were in total control.
Now I'm repeating myself by saying that he's repeating himself. He won't stop repeating himself. What's wrong with this guy?
And even Oklahoma City in January. They lost 3 straight, they won 8 straight, they lost 4 straight, and they lose regularly to bad teams. And again, I'll go to this. Westbrook's not overly verbal. He doesn't adapt particularly well because he's rigid. You know, it's all the things.
You know what this reminds me of? When you get into a conversation with someone online that you've never spoken to before, they know absolutely nothing about you. And they run out of points because you keep countering their points. So they make it personal. Oh, you must think this way because of X, Y, Z. And they've got no idea. They've got nothing else. They've got no more ammunition, no more points to make. And this is just very reminiscent of that. This Colin Cowherd, he's never been Russell Westbrook's teammates. I would be surprised if he's ever had a conversation with Westbrook. But yet here he is psychoanalyzing his personality. I guarantee you, I would bet everything I have that I own, that Russell Westbrook that you hear in the media is completely different to the teammate that he is. And the reason I say that is the Paul George quote that I said earlier. Paul George would not go to bat for this guy like that if he wasn't a good quality teammate, because Paul George is a free agent next year. He doesn't have to make Westbrook happy. Westbrook has made him happy. And he's done that by being a good teammate and not this caricature that's been created that seems completely contradictory to what teammates have said. Look at how much Steven Adams defends Westbrook. Do you really think these guys would go into bat for him if he was a jerk? I highly doubt it. And I would take the words from their teammates over this idiot who makes analogies to his next door neighbors being strange as some kind of reason as to why Oklahoma's struggling. That makes zero sense. And the funny thing about all of this is Oklahoma really isn't struggling that much. If you watch their games, you'd see that over the last 5 or 6 games, they've really started to manage the minutes and the games played by a lot of their stars. They don't want a repeat of what happened with Roberson. The 2 games against the Lakers that they lost, I don't think Westbrook played in either of them. He definitely didn't play in the game in LA, and the game against Memphis he didn't play either. And neither did Melo in either of those 2 games, the game in LA or the game against Memphis. It was all Paul George running the show there.
We've worked with somebody like this. They're not real great at communicating. They're kind of rigid. They're kind of stuck in their ways. They're smart as hell and really talented, but they're odd, and they don't work well with others.
So now he's repeating himself in the same breath. This is starting to get annoying. And I can see why I never wanted to listen to this guy in the first place. But then again, maybe I'm being a bit harsh on him. Maybe he's just not a good communicator, or he's a bit strange, or he likes pineapple on his pizza.
And it's funny because Chris Paul and James Harden, I predicted they were going to be a home run. They're 27-1 together. They were great together the first day. Why? Because they're verbal.
No, you idiot. The reason why the Rockets are going so well with Chris Paul and James Harden is they complement each other. Chris Paul was smart enough to adjust his game and his role in order to not get in Harden's way, and vice versa. That has nothing to do with communication. That has everything to do with them accepting their role early on. The reason Oklahoma struggled early was Carmelo doesn't really have the ability to change his role, and now that Paul George has changed his role and has become the second option on offense and the primary defender, Oklahoma's playing a lot better. It has absolutely nothing to do with personalities and everything to do with basketball ability. Simple.
Communicators, and they're not odd. By the way, Kyrie in Boston. Kyrie goes to Boston, all that new stuff's worked immediately.
Oh, he's contradicting himself now. I love this. So he's gone from pointing out all the players that Westbrook has played with, and whether it's Oladipo or Sabonis or Durant or whoever, right? James Harden, and the success that they've had in their new teams. And he's pointed that as an illustration as to why Westbrook makes his teammates worse. But now he's bringing up Kyrie Irving, who you could say the exact same thing, probably a much stronger argument for it, right? Because James Harden was not an immediate MVP candidate. Kevin Durant was in his prime. Now you can say that Kyrie Irving's in his prime too. Regardless, Kyrie Irving's gone to Boston, has made them better, and he's a legitimate MVP candidate. He would never have accomplished any of that playing alongside LeBron. His game was hindered by LeBron. LeBron thinks he's a point guard. So he's talking out of both sides of his mouth, which normally is a bad thing, but it's really not that much of a difference from when he talks out of one side of his mouth.
LeBron gets new guys instantly. Works. Westbrook still can't figure it out because strange guy can't.
Oh my God, this is what, like the 6th or 7th time he's called him a strange guy? And we're meant to not think that some of this stuff isn't personal against these players?
He's hard to play with. And he's got good players around him, and they're 32 and 26. I mean, this is what I always say about Westbrook. And you know what's interesting about Westbrook? He's the car alarm of the NBA.
No, he's the reigning MVP of the NBA.
You ever notice this with car alarms? You'd think they'd work, right? Oh, my car's getting broken into. There's a loud siren. That makes sense. That's a good business. But have you ever once in your life heard a car alarm and thought, ooh, somebody's car's being robbed?
No, but I have heard when someone's a complete dumbass and I know when to turn them off. Look, the Westbrook LeBron discussion is interesting because they both play very athletically. Westbrook has developed a lot of skills, and so has LeBron offensively. They're both streaky shooters, but when they're on, they're essentially unstoppable on the offensive end. But if we're going to talk about the impact that teammates have, and now LeBron has some average teammates and they're playing better, let's talk about what Westbrook did last year. He had 4 below average teammates. Yeah, he had Steven Adams, but Steven Adams wasn't comfortable in his role. He was injured, and he was trying to essentially be the second leading scorer on that team. It didn't work out. They also had Cantor, who was a revolving door on defense. They had Roberson, and of course they also had Oladipo, who was not comfortable in his role either. But for all his success this year, guess who Oladipo attributes that mostly to? Westbrook, for showing him how to play the game, how to train well, and then all that other stuff. Regardless, the point I was trying to make is, he took them to 47 wins last year. He was the league MVP, averaged a triple-double, something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. I thought it was one of those untouchable stats, like averaging 50 points per game, like Wilt. Averaging a triple-double, we've seen too many great players go for it, whether it was Jordan, or Magic, or Grant Hill, or even LeBron himself, and they came up short. And yet for Westbrook, a 6'3" guard, I always thought it would be, all those players I just mentioned, whether it was Jordan, or LeBron, or Magic, or Grant Hill, we're all talking 6'6" and up, and super athletic. Able to, you can see those guys doing all those things. You wouldn't imagine a guy 6'3" dominating a game like Westbrook has. So based off LeBron and what he's done in 2 games, which somehow 2 games is now an excellent sample size to judge teams, based off what Westbrook did last year with below mediocre players and getting into the playoffs in the Western Conference and winning the MVP, is that the greatest season of all time? Of course not. But also keep in mind players like Allen Iverson. What Allen Iverson did in getting to the finals with Aaron McKee and Eric Snow as his next 2 best offensive players. He took him to the finals when, yes, the East was a little bit weaker than the West, but it's nowhere near as bad as what LeBron's been able to just waltz through over the last 7 years. He had to go through Indiana with Reggie Miller, Toronto with Vince Carter, Milwaukee with Ray Allen, Glenn Robinson, and Sam Cassell. Those were all very good teams. Quite honestly, any of those teams in some years LeBron has gone, just one of those teams would have been their biggest threat. Now, with all that being said, I am very impressed with how LeBron is adapting to these players, and it's more of a case of these players fit his game. LeBron doesn't adapt to others. We know this. We saw this season. We saw it in the finals last year. The Cavs had lots of offensive talent. J.R. Smith, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love. You had guys that could score. Kyle Korver. There's another guy I forgot to mention before when I was talking about the talent that LeBron's had. And all these guys are scoring primarily. They're not dominant defenders. They were going up against Golden State, who had a lot of perimeter scoring. LeBron should have been the guy that adapted his game in a similar way that Chris Paul adapted his, and Paul George has adapted his now, to finding what the team needs, which is defense, and providing that. He didn't do that. Instead, he just went after his numbers and got obliterated in the fourth quarters by Kevin Durant. And even this season with Isaiah Thomas and Derrick Rose and all these other guys, LeBron insists on playing point guard, and he didn't give the ball up. And it's no wonder these guys failed. It's absolutely no wonder. Even guys like Jay Crowder, who I mentioned earlier, he went out of his way to say, look, we move the ball now. Before it was all in LeBron's hands, and he dictated everything. And that's what I've been saying for a long time. The point I'm trying to make is LeBron doesn't adapt his game whatsoever to his teammates. Now, they've finally found some teammates that fit his game, but that's not him adapting to it. He's still got the ball in his hands. He's still going to score. He's still going to create. But he doesn't defend, and they can essentially hide him on defense now. So they found a perfect combination. So kudos to the GM and Dan Gilbert. But in terms of the conversation with him and Westbrook, they're right. They're neck and neck. But it's not one is vastly superior as Colin Cowherd is trying to make out. Not even close. If I'm starting a team now, I'm taking Westbrook over LeBron. But I would have no issues if somebody took LeBron over Westbrook. That's just my thoughts on it. Anyway, I'm going to get some sleep now. Hope you enjoyed this episode. And if I say it sounded cranky, it's probably got not a whole lot to do with the head cold. It's probably got to do with dealing with an idiot with a head cold. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the episode. I'll catch you guys next time.